Are you all ready to experience some quality time with David Mitchell, who has chosen some of his top comedy moments for us? We should say that God has given us an extra item for our bill tonight by taking Barry Cryer from us so swiftly today. I know that everybody in this room will be feeling just the same way about that. Barry was a comedy genius, our real dad. That's how I like to think of him. Anyway, and there will be a moment where we'll bring him into the conversation at the end. But before that, we have lots of stuff to watch, loads of stuff to watch with David Mitchell. David, who we've grown to love over the years too, because of that carefully crafted comic persona that he's developed of that rather sensitive, slightly irritable man who seems to be experiencing thousands of small agonies all the time. But tonight he's going to show the real him, the zany, the crazy, the outrageous David Mitchell, as he shares with us his top comedy moments. David Mitchell!
Hello. Hi. Hello.
So, David, I'm not sure whether this is going to be like your Desert Island Discs clips, or these show us who you are, or how you develop the work that you do.
I think they're funny clips that make me think about comedy a bit, and that I think have influenced me, and I've tried to skew them towards the more sort of slapstick physical comedy, despite being a terrible physical performer myself. I only seek to amuse from the chin up. And as far as I'm concerned, when I'm on a panel show, I'm not being hired. And the occasional gesture with the arm, that sort of thing, but I'm not. So I feel in many ways unqualified to comment on slapstick. So maybe you'd like to leave now. But yes, I'm aware that I'm not a natural sort of bendy, rubbery performer.
Maybe not rubbery, but there is a kind of physicality about what you do, isn't there? We don't always see you behind a desk.
Well, I try and use my bad back comically. I channel it. So, but yeah. By the way, in your introduction, I couldn't hear what you were saying at all. I could hear that you were talking.
Yes.
But it sounded like.
I don't really think there's anything you need to know. I mean,
well, that's just in case there was a key piece of information that I'm not reflecting. I did not hear it. And for all I know, can you hear what I'm saying? Can you hear me?
No.
Yes, good. That's reassuring.
So was it hard to choose these clips then, or?
Yes, well, I think I think these are all funny clips, but also I worry that I could have chosen other things instead, and does this really encapsulate comedy? And maybe you'll all go away saying, I can't believe he didn't pick this, and this.
You can't hear us. Okay. Can you hear me speaking now?
I think the darkness will have helped.
Can you hear?
No, it's funny you said you couldn't hear us, because literally 2 minutes earlier I asked if you could hear us, but of course you couldn't hear me asking that, and that's obviously, it's a flawed system. But
will we see? Well, do let us know if you can't. But I hope
well,
you
they
can.
have.
Yeah.
So.
We'll just try and speak from the diaphragm and enunciate as best we can.
It's worth remembering that medieval buildings like this were constructed for the clergy to speak in Latin to a largely unlettered populace. So in many ways it's built not to understand what you're hearing, but just to get a vague sense of noise. So it couldn't be more apt.
Are we going to find out about your influences? Are we going to find out about your friendships?
Yes, a little bit of both, and also about some of my comedy, the things I like most in comedy, the things I'm, and also because I'm a sort of bitter and negative person, it will lead me to talk about things that I like and go, I like that, but what I don't like, ...
Are you? I mean, do you have an interest in the technicalities of comedy, or do you think that they're best turned away from, and it should be best done by instinct?
I think instinct is the main thing you've got. All you have, really, if you're trying to create comedy, is what makes you laugh. And if you're writing in a partnership, you've got what makes you laugh and what makes the other person laugh. But you're really only guessing. And so I think the instinct is the main thing. You can then analyze things when they haven't worked and go, oh, I see that was lacking this, this, and this. And you can be, I always think a thing to be very aware of in comedy is tiny little, I mean, in performance, and it's ironic to be doing this in a space where, as far as, maybe up to 70% of the people can't understand what I'm saying because of the miking. But if you're performing something and you fluff a line, even though the audience has completely understood what you're saying, they won't laugh. And they can't laugh. There's a bit of, I want to say grit in the oyster, but grit in the oyster is a good thing because it creates jewelry. But I mean, whatever, a negative thing.
Spanning works?
Yeah, exactly, a jewelry spoiling bit of grit. And so even though people have received all of the comic information into their brain, the laughter reflex cannot be, can't be caused. And that's a weird thing about comedy, and that sort of does bear analysis. But I think the fundamental creative thing is just something that makes you laugh, and you hope you're not the only one.
And have you had to, in a way, kind of redeploy your instincts, as in a way the kind of comedy that you do has shifted a bit over the years? I mean, you do much more kind of off-the-cuff type improvisational sort of comedy now, don't you, I think, perhaps?
Well, I like panel shows, is the truth. They didn't really exist in the same way when I was growing up. So the comedy I first got into, and it was TV comedy, really, not so much films, not so much live stuff. It was Monty Python and the Two Ronnies and sitcoms like Yes Minister, Blackadder, that sort of thing. That was what, and so that was the type of comedy I envisaged making if I were lucky enough to get a job in it. The first panel show I really watched was Have I Got News for You, which started when I was already a teenager. And the whole panel show boom only came after that. But that's something, it's not so much something I dreamt of doing, but something I found I enjoyed doing. And it's a buzz sitting in front of a studio audience and trying to keep them amused, trying to sort of keep the comic energy going. It's a different sort of excitement from something that's scripted and you're more careful about, which feels more like work, I suppose.
What did your family find funny? What did you all laugh at together?
We laughed a lot at Peter Sellers together. I remember particularly my dad and my grandfather and I, we would all love the slapstick in the Pink Panther films. And that was definitely, that brought us together, and you could get a kind of, because there's so much slapstick in that, you could build up a sort of hysteria watching it. And I think you can only build up a sort of hysteria when there's more than one of you watching it. I think it would be quite difficult to watch that on your own, and you can be amused, but you keep it together. But the three of us watching it, we would be sort of crying with laughter, and that was that was great.
I think that means we have to have the next clip, first clip.
It does.
Could we see the Pink Panther, please?
How about you, madam?
Yes, of course.
Your leg is better, Sir Charles. What? I say your leg is better. Oh, yes, much better, thank you. You know, Mr. Tucker? Ah! Oh, it's my bureau, man. My hand. I'm sorry. Sit down. Oh, that's better.
Very good. Peter Sellers and Colin Gordon, that, isn't it?
Yes,
with
I'm
the bars?
having watched it lots of times. I think my favourite bit now is actually the bit of dialogue where I don't know whether it was properly discernible in this room, but just the line, "It's my beer, old man." It's just the sort of the slight crossness and complete incomprehension of the sort of urgency of cooling his hand down. But I love that because that's sort of quite a big bit of physical comedy, but for me it holds together as realistic. It's believable, and it comes out of a moment of suavity from Clouseau when he's just asked David Niven a sort of slightly incisive question about his limp and is feeling quite clever and quite like a grown-up detective in this sophisticated alpine bar, and then he puts his hand up to, in self-congratulation, and immediately everything turns to sort of pain and humiliation. It's sort of beautifully done, and that for me is the thing that makes Peter Sellers so special, is that he manages, despite the fact that in so many of the films he's most famous for, all he ever does is fall over, fall into things, and be serially humiliated. Somehow, whenever he gets up again, you believe that the last thing he expects is for him to fall over again. He draws his dignity together in milliseconds and again becomes the person, the most dignified. But it's essentially it's like the Queen getting a custard pie in their face when Clouseau falls over, despite the fact, and to do that when what you are is a queen that relentlessly gets custard pied, is an amazing feat of acting. And I sort of actually think the most remarkable thing about him isn't just the skill with which he does the slapstick, but the characterization with which he makes you believe he's not expecting it to happen again.
Is it important that he never wants these things to happen? Because
Yeah.
there's another approach to comedy where the comedian is the force of chaos.
Yeah.
But here he's the person trying to prevent chaos from happening.
Absolutely. It's just the tension between what he wants, and he wants to be this sage, admired, attractive, organized professional, and yet he just falls into things and smashes things, and no one can understand him speaking, and he doesn't understand that they can't. I mean, his life is a sort of complete humiliation, and yet he can't see it in himself, and that is why, for me, why it keeps being funny. If he was crazy and anarchic, then it would just get samey. But because each time it causes him pain, as if it's the first time his trousers ever fell down in public, then you can enjoy it as if it's only happened once. And here, for me, that for me is the difference between him and, say, Norman Wisdom, of whom I'm not a huge fan. And Norman Wisdom, he's obviously very successful, obviously very skilled, but for me, he just looks like he's in for some kind of pratfall. And that therefore becomes boring, and you don't care. You always care about Clouseau. You're always slightly watching it through your fingers. And to do that with the sheer quantity of crap falling on him is, I think, a remarkable piece of acting. And he should have got an Oscar for it, and he didn't. In fact, his only Oscar nomination is for a slightly uninteresting, sort of mild, enigmatic performance, because that's the world we live in, where someone sort of just musing boringly is considered to be of cultural significance. And that, a performance like that, a performance that shouldn't work, it shouldn't be possible to believe in this man, Clouseau, to believe he has any self-esteem or dignity left, and yet he does every time, and you buy it. And that's amazing acting.
David, you're being true to your word here. You are using this as an opportunity to talk about things that you really don't like,
Yeah,
aren't you?
absolutely, yes. It's always, yeah.
Does it help that Sellers is also fantastically charismatic and good-looking too? I think this is a sort of underestimated side of him.
I suppose he is good. He's not. To me, I wouldn't say he's like handsome, but he's perfectly pleasant looking. He can look with a bow tie. He can look quite together for a few seconds before, you know.
Did it ever
something.
worry you that kind of ambiguity in the Pink Panther films, whether the Pink Panther was a diamond or somehow Clouseau himself, or this cartoon that was only in the title sequences?
Oh yeah, yes. I mean, it took me a lot, because the first time I came across the Pink Panther with the cartoons about a Pink Panther, and then discovering that this is a spin-off of the title sequence of a film about a jewel heist is, you know, one of the many sort of annoying things. But, you know.
But not enough to disrupt its pleasure.
Yeah, we live in a world where Channel 4's main sitcom is 8 out of 10 Cats Does Countdown, which has spun off an anniversary mashup between two shows in order to celebrate Channel 4 being 30 or 40 or something, and now it's actually a show. So it's, you know, I accept that things go a bit inexplicable in our culture. So, you know, well, I will never quite understand why so many people have accepted the title Strictly Come Dancing.
Oh my God, yes.
It's just, you know, it's totally illogical.
And it can be stuck on front of anything now, can't it?
I mean, but I mean, it shows you titles don't matter. That's what it shows you.
I mean, that's just
they might have called it Program 72 Bananas, and then go, that's the one about the dancing. Program 72 Bananas. We like that.
I'm glad you raised that issue, because it's a historic show title with the title of part of the title of an Australian movie stuck to the front of it.
Yeah, part of the title, admittedly an Australian movie which is about dancing, but.
It could have been Picnic at Hanging Come Dancing, you mean, and that would have been much more confusing. Can we have the next clip, please? We won't say what this is, we'll just watch it.
So Bill Murray gets a smattering.
This is a profound, I mean, not just a funny film, it's a profound film, Groundhog Day.
Yes. Yeah, no, there's no better film. It's a brilliant, it's a brilliant bit of work, and I love that bit in particular because that's the moment when he's worked out his strategy for seducing his co-worker, but it's not quite working. It's just he's tried everything, the French poetry, and he can't quite close the deal, and you see him there at the end shifting, and that's come on now, this is when you get off with me, right? I've planned everything, but it's sort of, he's not feeling it, it's not right. And all that, I love kids, who wants to be adopted? And I think it's so resonant of things in life that aren't quite clicking. Things like that when people are sort of trying, and it happens so much in performance things. I mean, there must be, anyone who's done a long run of a West End show must know the night where it's like that, where none of the things, they're not, the things that were happening naturally and the audience were responding to, they were pushing too hard on, and no one was enjoying it anymore. They're not, and I just find so many times in life, you sort of realize, this is one of those occasions, one of those days where you're just trying so hard to be something that you just can't be. And it's a sort of great moment. It's what the point of the film, when he then descends into despair, and then and it's a perfect film. But I like that bit. I think of that bit often in life when things aren't quite working out, and it's I love kids, I want to adopt you, that kind of thing, and it's so insincere but sort of desperate to desperate to convey the thing he wants to convey. How can I convey this more forcibly, he's thinking. And the answer is, well, it would work if you were sincere.
It has that in it, doesn't it? That idea of things not quite clicking, and those moments when we feel slightly dissociated from our own actions.
Yeah.
But that despair is important too, isn't it? The idea of going through a barrier till you reach whatever it is on the other side. I mean, it's a really powerful film about like personal development, isn't it? And being moral and good.
No, it's like it's a sort of a terrifying ancient morality tale. It's like, Dr. Faustus is that kind of level of kind of grim darkness, but with an absolutely enviable gag rate. But once again, no Oscars for that film. Oh no, there'll be something mopey about people's relationships that will have absolutely swept the board, despite having failed to raise a smile from anyone. But that, oh yes, very well done. Anyway, now on to the serious work. We were looking for something longer. So yes, once again, get the slag up, apparently ostensibly celebrating something, but that's the thing about these comedians, they're so snide.
Well, talk about Bill Murray then. That'll change the temperature.
Yeah.
Talk about the subtlety of what he does.
Well, Bill Murray is one of the most naturally funny film stars, that woo indeed.
Yeah.
And his mother is in. And I remember particularly that another bit I considered instead of that for a bit with him in is the bit in Ghostbusters where he's playing the notes on the piano and just goes, "They hate this," and it's just such a enjoyable bullshit, and so his ability to make apparently off the top of his head bullshit, a lot of which one imagines is off the top of his head, immediately likable but ridiculous and funny is a wonderful thing in the world.
He's got such a warmth about him, but it's sort of in spite of himself, isn't it?
Yes, it's a likability that probably, more, if Peter Sellers has the sort of can get the dignity back, Bill Murray has got that strong likability, and he can behave appallingly, and you still like him, and that's that's an amazing quality. And it's probably not something he's consciously doing, but it means he's in the right job.
Is it an indispensable quality as well? Do we have to like the people who we find funny?
No, I don't think so. But I think it's a very strong quality, and I think if it's used in the right way, it's a sort of powerful force in terms of stopping a story being boring or inconsequential. I remember a film called, I think it was called Bad Teacher, starring Cameron Diaz. It's quite entertaining. It's not a brilliant film, but Cameron Diaz is so likable that they're able to make the central character utterly irredeemable, and you still watch the film. With any other actor, you'd have to have put in some sign in the script that this person isn't totally contemptible. But because she just has a sort of inner likability, a sort of sunniness that can't be entirely suppressed, they were able to not have that at all. And she's basically an absolute monster, and then at some point slightly redeems herself, whatever. But no glimmer of she might be all right really is needed, because you're watching in a kind of, yeah, she's all right really, that. And Bill Murray's got an impish version of that. But also in a way that you sort of, he's got the incorrigibility that Bob Hope had, the sort of feeling of, before he does something funny, you think he's going to. Which I suppose is linked to Peter Sellers' what he's desperately projecting is, nothing funny is going to happen to me. So you can forget it. Bill Murray is just sort of twinkling. Peter Sellers is sort of going, get that twinkle out of here.
Does it make a difference when you have knowledge of what's going on behind the camera? Does the fact that Peter Sellers was a pretty haunted person change the experience of watching him once you know that?
I think it can do, and I think Peter Sellers seems not, I've not investigated more about him, to be honest, because I don't think it would help me continue to enjoy his work. And because he was, in many ways, a complicated man, but put more simply, a nasty man. But those films are very funny, and I'm very happy to compartmentalize that sort of thing, and not read too many biographies of him.
Let's have the next clip, please. So this is very different, isn't it?
Yes.
Because we don't quite believe that this is happening in the real world, do we? This is something in if we thought that Peter Sellers could just about exist in reality, we're slightly somewhere else here, aren't we?
It's a very sort of delicately heightened comedy, 30 Rock, and they allow room for unrealistic comic ideas, and it makes it such a joyful show that you can sort of you can feel the writer's joy in so many of the things in it, and it does hold together as a story, but it's not realism in the way that the two previous clips were, even though they're sort of, Groundhog Day, something impossible's happening, but it's happening in the real world.
I mean, is it that in what we've seen so far, we forget the idea of the writer, but in 30 Rock, we're sort of aware of jokes, aren't we?
Yes.
And of the presence of the writer.
You're willing the writer, and it's about a writer's room, isn't it? And you're willing the writers to come up with the comic ideas. And what I love about that, the Leap Day thing, is firstly, it's a brilliant way of parodying Christmas, this Leap Day idea, and there's so much stuff to it. There's Leap Day William, and he's got gills, and there's you do something you've never done before, and later on in that episode, she goes into the office of her boss, and he goes, happy Leap Day Lemon, help yourself to rhubarb. And there's just, there's rhubarb as well. There's just, and that's the thing about Christmas. There's so many things. And anyone observing Christmas, from the outside would say, well, that's enough things for a whole culture. That's not for a festival. That's more. There's more things to do with Christmas than I know about most nations. There's different music. The houses are done up all sparkly, and with the imagery, the snowmen, the angels. It's so random, it seems, and I love the fact that they parody that by just taking a whole different load of crazy stuff and saying that's at this festival, and that
the Mariana Trench,
Mariana Trench, and instead of the North Pole, and and what it isn't crazier than the North Pole, and that So I love that, but the thing I like most about it is the experience of the central character, which is that she's never heard of this. And I think that's how life feels for most of us on many occasions. We all feel like we're slightly out of it. We've been slightly, we didn't go to school on the day they did whatever, this big thing, that we're all sneaking around thinking at some point the huge area of ignorance I'm not even aware of myself is going to be exposed. And she's just brought absolutely face to face with a huge thing that everyone she knows 200 things about, and she hasn't heard of at all. And it's just a great parody of a massive element of the human condition. And in a way, what a lot of sitcoms are entirely about is that feeling of being weirdly out of it in a way that you don't quite understand. So I sort of think it's a brilliant concept.
Why does that strike such a chord? That idea, because in a way it's a similar idea to the one that's there in Groundhog Day, isn't it?
Well, what I think is comedy does that is fundamentally a very reassuring thing is the message of comedy is feeling like an outsider is normal. The people who don't feel like outsiders are the weirdos. And that is absolutely, and I could not be more convinced of that. That actually that feeling like you're totally in the middle of things and together and you know all the stuff and you're confident, feeling like you feel you should feel makes you odd, makes you delusional, makes you unimaginative, makes you thoughtless. And actually feeling a bit scratchy and on the edge and odd and everything, that makes you the normal person. And that knowledge of when you walk into a party and there's lots of people apparently chatting and having drinks, everyone looks hugely relaxed. They're not. They all found it weird. They all went in thinking, who am I going to talk to? And then they found someone. They desperately talk to them. And then they think, should I talk to someone else? Shall I say I'm going to the loo? Either that, just most normal people are thinking that most of the time. The I don't know about Leap Day sensibility is what it is like to be a nervous and sentient being.
I thought you'd get a round of applause then, and there it is. You know, the bit that you couldn't hear me saying was me saying they're going to see the real David Mitchell tonight, and I think it turned out to be right, isn't it? Can we have the next clip, please? A lot going on there too, isn't there? Parody and the kind of that front of cloth idea where I'm talking directly to you.
I mean, watching that, I can't. Having made TV shows, I can't help but feel the delight they must all have experienced when they realised they'd got that take. And that's one, you know, and there's an irony to it, of course, because what it's representing is a shit, unusable take that was the best this drunken woman could do. But in fact, it is a sort of perfect piece of comedy performance. And they just must have been, you know, jumping up in the air and high-five, because that is just, you can't fake it. It's one shot coming through, and it's just perfectly clumsy and wrong, and you're just the journey of, yeah, actually she's holding it together, and all that looks a bit, you know, and then it just sort of collapses entirely, and yet she still feels maybe she's getting away with it. It's absolutely brilliant, and I don't know if you're, obviously a lot of people here are familiar with that show, which is a great show, and in that whole episode, the whole episode is about, she's, you know, an actress who hasn't worked for a while, and she's got this advert for a local fruit winery, whatever that is, and turns up, and the fruit wine is disgusting, but she's really excited to have the gig, but she gets all nervous, and she has too much of the fruit wine, and she won't come out of her trailer, and it's just, there's been this build-up to, you know, to, is she going to be able to get her shit together, no pun intended, or not? And then that is the perfect punchline to that, because you think maybe she is doing, and you think she's a sort of character you could imagine would just come and sort of wander out of the pavilion and hit immediate six. And it looks like she's doing that, but then it's actually a six where she ends up hitting herself in the face with a cricket bat. It's just a wonderful, old-fashioned piece of brilliant comic performing.
It's also just really good on like the conventions of the form, isn't it?
Yeah, oh yes.
That thing of what people do when they're indicating something behind them. Yeah. We've all seen that on you know, the news point. Here I am at this building in the cathedral.
Yes, it's absolutely, the whole thing, if it was done well, would have been deeply terrible. You know, that's not going to be a good advert. For that it's just that doing adverts like that is just a sort of weird convention that people have ceased to question. That, you know, that we'll just, you just talk about it and go, hi, and it looks cool and all that, and you tell them it tastes nice, and then they'll believe you, and it's just, you realize, and I sort of love it when you see adverts like that, and you go, this isn't an advert that is making the product seem better. This is an advert made by people who are sort of thinking, well, we've got to do adverts, right? And that was why adverts were so great in the 80s, because it seemed like they were totally divorced from the need to sell the product. And it felt there was a time when in the whole country there were sort of 4 lagers. And whatever pub you went into would have one of the 4 lagers. And so they all had their pretty stable market share, and it was all tied up with whatever brewery owned the pub. So that brewery owns this pub, so they get Carlsberg. That one gets Castlemaine 4X, whatever. They all tasted like sort of fizzy okayness that made you feel better about yourself. So it didn't matter. No one was really thinking about hops or anything. And so the advertising agencies were freed up just to make funny films, just to sort of vaguely maintain the profile of the brand. And so you had that era, you got the Carlsberg one with Orson Welles, and you got the Castlemaine 4X, looked like we overdid it with the sherry, and the Hofmeister Follow the Bear, and it just didn't matter. None of them are saying anything about why you should buy their product, because the answer to why you should buy their product is, it is the beer that is available in some of the locations you will find yourself. And, you know, your alternative will be not to have a beer, and that's not why you went in there. So they don't have to say anything good or bad or anything. They just have to remind you, here's a reminder, this exists, and a sketch. And it's great for advertising. And then as soon as advertising has to actually convey, okay, well, the thing about this that's good is it's 12% cheaper but if you buy it on Thursday, and it turns to sort of tedious facts.
They spent millions on them as well.
Yeah,
that period.
absolutely. Because they've just said, let's give them a
expensive.
big budget, and we've all got 20% of the share of the business. Let's make sure we all got. And I also remember car adverts used to be a bit like that. And I remember particularly there was a period when Peugeot, they would have these adverts. It would look very good and everything. A Peugeot would drive through this beautiful Italian town, and everyone is turning around and looking at the Peugeot and ignoring ceasing to get off with their lover, or not, a bank robber who's putting the money down, or just because they're so amazed by this car. And it's a Peugeot. And it's fine, a Peugeot, but you sort of go, that's a campaign for Rolls-Royce. That Peugeot has said, okay, we'll do it. Rolls-Royce don't need any adverts because apparently everyone knows about Rolls-Royce. If they want a stratospherically expensive car, they'll ask for a Rolls-Royce. And so these adverts are pretending that a Peugeot does that. And no one's going to believe it. None of the people buying Peugeots that week are going to go, I'm going to have that Peugeot, because everyone's head is going to turn in Luton as I drive past. They know it's lies. It's just they're saying, here's a reminder that Peugeot exists, and then a nice little film that we all had to go to Italy to make.
Do you like doing adverts?
Sorry?
Do you like doing adverts?
Oh, well, they pay very well. So, yeah. But obviously, there's, then people are mean to you online. So it's that sort of balance.
Is it worth it, though?
I mean, there's a number at which it becomes worth it. And that varies according to circumstance.
I think we should have another clip.
Yeah.
Oh. So we have our first British thing, and class comes into the room.
Yeah. Well, for me, that is all about the moment, which is one of the funniest moments in anything, is where he goes over to the sideboard and sort of lifts his leg up in order to endure how disgusting the wine is. And he can't bring himself to admit that the man is right and this is absolutely undrinkable crap. But he just, in order to keep it together, in order not to spit it out, he has to, and so that's such a brilliant choice, and the sight of his enormously long foreleg coming up into shot is brilliant. But yeah, the whole scene is sort of encapsulates him. Throughout the opening of the bottle, Fawlty is looking cravenly off screen to the left because he's, at that point, got it into his head that Bernard Cribbins is the hotel inspector. And so he's just trying to, and he's sort of doing a little monologue as he's doing it. So, there's a bit left, and ignoring this man who in about 3 minutes' time he will think is the hotel inspector, also wrongly. But it's sort of, there's so much going on, and yet the patience just to have the slow process of him gradually opening a disgusting bottle of wine in real time.
It's real time. It's long and complicated prop work.
Oh, yeah, the prop has been very well designed.
It was really good to be able to concentrate on that moment, because I think it's we all know it off by heart, don't we, all of these episodes, but I think you've chosen quite a neglected moment there, one that didn't show up on the LPs that you borrowed from the library. But yes, the complexity of that prop and the physicality of the moment.
No, it looks, and he's doing it in front of a studio audience, so it's all happening live, like in a play, but with close-ups, and it's completely real. The failure to get the cork out in more than one go, which again, it's realistic because that's what happens when wine's corked, and and a brilliant moment where he's desperately trying to. And finally it bursts out, and the actor who's ordered the wine, playing the outboard motor salesman, is sort of dabbing at his knife and fork with his napkin, and it's so subtle and dry and brilliant.
It's also like studio, multi-camera in the studio, a form of doing sitcoms that has sort of vanished, really, hasn't it? I mean, do you, in a way, do you wish that you had been able to be to work in that era? Because it's just not done like that anymore.
Well,
is it
absolutely,
really?
it is. I mean, that's how we did Upstart Crow, and I loved working that way, and it's sort of the kind of television I imagined I'd do.
Yeah.
You know, when I was, or dreamt I'd do, I suppose, and it's absolutely doing a play in costume. And obviously, you get more than one go, and it takes longer to record than the actual episode is. But it's a much more theatrical experience, and it allows you to do things that, you know, like that. There is an energy to the audience's laughter because they're really watching it happening. They're not watching an edit of it, and it allows different kinds of jokes. And certainly in, you know, Fawlty Towers is, you know, is a farce. It's it needs that theatricality. But I think in things like Blackadder, other studio sitcoms, there is a type of line you can write for a studio audience sitcom that is more overtly comic than you can get away with in a single camera environment. And it's, you know, and you can get a sort of pacey, impactful funniness to a characterful story that is really difficult to get in the sort of more filmic environment of a single camera shoot. And I think there's a real place for it. And it's you know, it's always it's a different form to a half-hour comedy that's not in front of a studio audience, and it's totally different. People often say, and it won't surprise you to hear that I get annoyed by this, but people often say that they don't like to hear the audience laugh. They call it canned laughter. It's never canned laughter. It's always laughter that the audience is genuinely, you know, a noise they've genuinely made at that moment. And it wouldn't work just putting canned laughter over it. But they say it's patronizing to be told when to laugh. And I don't, that's totally wrong. For me, it's representing comedy as something you enjoy as a community with other people. And television is that. When you watch television, other people are watching it too. And broadcast, old school broadcast television, where you went to school the next day and everyone's seen the same program, is something as you watch it, you're aware you're part of a community watching it. And some of the best TV still has that feel. Something, you know, it's usually the big dramas, something like Line of Duty. The whole country will be watching it together, you feel. Millions of people would be following the story. And that's why studio sitcom is such a sort of powerful, warm, it's a shared experience. And the studio audience laughter is an expression of that.
Do you think that's also the reason why it persists and survives so much? I mean, Fawlty Towers was the thing that was brought out to cheer us up during the pandemic. If there had been a pandemic in the 1970s, there's no way that anybody would have been putting anything out from, you know, 3 decades previously. Is there?
Well, I suppose it was I mean, there might have been repeating episodes of The Goon Show on the radio, maybe. But there was no television that was loved in that way. But it sort of links to, you know, the shared laughter thing. It's linked to what I felt with my dad and my grandfather watching Peter Sellers, and it wouldn't have been as funny if we were on our own. And that's, I think, what studio audience laughter is doing. It's allowing you to feel you're part of an audience, and that's not patronizing. It's not a lie. It's true.
Is that happening with the next generation down in your family?
I haven't.
What do you laugh at with your children?
We actually watch a lot of Disney, I suppose. No Peter Sellers yet. But, you know.
Oh, it'll come. It'll come, won't it?
Yeah. And Roadrunner.
Okay.
That's a big hit.
Archetypal.
Yeah.
Let's have the next clip, please. I rather think it's good that we don't say what they are, because then we hear you reacting. Let's see it.
Now the sport with Alan Partridge.
Thanks, Chris. And it's a special desk of sport this week as we look forward to all the sporting action that will take place in this year's 1994 World Cup finals in America in Alan Partridge's World Cup Countdown to 94. Goal! Goal! Well, it's going to be 3 weeks of non-stop action, and to help us along and add a little bit of colour, and fun to the proceedings, I've got with me a soccer meter. What's that, Alan? Well, I'll tell you, it's very simple. It's to explain the group system. Now, first of all these long arms here, these long signposts, are the venues where the matches will be played. Dallas, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and so on. If you look at me from above, you can see that these are the group. This is the group system. It's 14 groups: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, and there are 4 rounds. There's round 1, the red round, yellow round, blue round, red round again. That's my colour coding, not FIFA's. You won't find that with FIFA, just with me. So that's the basis of it, and as you can see, they get progressively fewer towards the centre, the ultimate goal being the World Cup. All right, let's take an example. OK, round 1 is Pasadena. Let's say it takes place in Pasadena, between Chile and Paraguay, something like that. OK, and then we're through to round 2, which is, let's say it's San Francisco. We've not got much time here. San Francisco, and that goes through to Orlando. So let's take it round to Orlando there. Let's move those out of the way. Where's San Francisco? Right, just going to find San Francisco. Where is it? There it is, right. So San Francisco have played Orlando, and then we're through to round 3, Los Angeles. It's not written. It's not written on that side. It should be, but it's blooming not. And then it's whoever went that then we're through to the final of the World Cup. Who's that going to be? Goal!
It's like a Louis Armstrong solo, that or something, isn't it? It's perfect. Absolutely perfect.
It's a sort of brilliantly misconceived contraption, and it seems perfect that it's the 1994 World Cup. I mean, I'm not a football fan, but surely the 1994 World Cup never has football felt less relevant at that point. And there he is talking about, it's the perfect environment for football, like Christmas, to sort of seem insane and inexplicable. But yes, such brilliantly constructed fumbling, and you can believe he's worked out that system. And the moment when he's gone through and he goes, that's my colour coding, not FIFA's. You won't find that with FIFA, just me. And you sort of go, why have you done your own colour coding?
We believe he's a real person too, don't we? Alan Partridge is part of our lives.
Oh,
now,
yes.
But
Yeah.
there is no, there's nothing kind of, there's no kind of painted flats there, is there? This is absolutely realised and three-dimensional.
Yeah, and it's there's some just sort of lovely little subtle, with the way he goes, I haven't got much time here, is so real. You hear live broadcasters, comfortable live broadcasters say that kind of thing. They're aware of the time, it's beautifully observed, but just exaggerated enough to be ridiculous. And the use of the word, never have the words twat and shit been more effectively comically used. And the fact that shit, I think, is less rude than twat. So logically, you should go shit then twat. But it's much funnier that way round, and I don't really know why. That twat is, when you're so surprised by shit, having had twat. Yeah.
There is a list. I mean, there is an official BBC list of swearing intensity, and I think he may have it that way round.
Well, no, because shit you can get away with at 6:30 on Radio 4 now. It's weird. Radio 4 is a bit more accepting of swearing. On Would I Lie to You at 8 o'clock on BBC One, we can't say crap. I mean,
there's no watershed
it's ridiculous,
on the radio,
isn't it? But shit, you can say, just on Radio 4 at 6:30 now, a bit. You can't just say shit. You have to say other things. But so shit is really not that rude now, and much less rude than twat. But nevertheless, just so fun. Twat, that's funny. And then he just says, a goal goes in, and he just says shit. And that's,
You must know Steve Coogan. Is there a blurry line between Partridge and Coogan, or are they very distinct beings?
I know him. I don't know him very well, but I've worked with him, and and he is brilliant. There's definitely there's a lot of him in Alan Partridge, and a lot of I think he's exaggerating elements of himself, and it's not a complete it's not a complete transformation, but it is very, very different. It is, because it's absolutely, if there's one thing Steve Coogan absolutely isn't, it's someone who's interested in the world that Alan Partridge is interested in. That milieu of sort of Frank Boff level broadcasting, he is contemptuous of, and because Steve Coogan aspires to be, and rightly to be an artist, and yet the frame of reference of Alan Partridge is totally different, and he represents it brilliantly. He sort of there's a bit where in one of the I think the first series of I'm Alan Partridge, and he's introduced to someone at a funeral, and they work in a different area of TV from one he's interested in, and he just shrugs. He just goes and moves away, and that's sort of absolute sort of laser focus on essentially getting what he's doing now, which is getting on the equivalent of the One Show, is sort of hilarious for its obsession with something that is ultimately so inconsequential.
What do you make of the way that character has grown over the years? Because I think on the day-to-day, he was sort of thought of as being a kind of version of David Coleman, I think.
Yeah.
Was much more closely pegged to a real model. But now he's mutated into something else.
Well, I would see. It's interesting. I would say it's so real. I'd say that is like the younger version of who he is now, and it's not a different character. It's just a character that's got older, like a real person. So you absolutely buy that human being becomes a human being that's represented now, and it's very, it's great that they got the characterization so right at the start that they haven't had to fudge anything.
Yeah, it doesn't look crude, does it? There's no. Sometimes when you look back at the early version,
it's not like the first series of Homer Simpson. It looks and sounds a bit different, but it's not like that at all.
Let's have the next one.
How do you feel?
I feel kind of strange.
No, you look good. You look tough.
I do?
Yeah, like an action star. Look like an action star.
Yeah, the shoulders up, yeah. Take a good deep breath. Suck it in, that's good. Okay, now look, in this scene, you're hurting inside. You're hurting inside. You're not sure who to trust. You want to run. You want to run into the arms of your beloved.
Hi, I'm Daisy.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you? So when I yell action, you are going to run from point A over there, point B over here.
That seems kind of hard.
Well, think of it as an errand. Your errand is to run across the freeway until I yell cut.
I get it. But doesn't that seem a little dangerous, though?
No. We have professional stuntmen doing the driving, so you'll be completely safe.
Oh, professional stuntman. That's how they do it. I was wondering how they did that. Stunt drivers.
Okay, you ready to do one?
Sure, they're going really fast. Yeesh.
so great. You were fantastic. You were great. Wasn't it great? Congratulations. It was so good. I don't want to do this anymore. What are you talking about? I don't want to do it. I just want to run errands. Heavenly God. Heavenly God. What are you talking about? Not many people can do what you just did. The stunt drivers were really impressed, weren't they? Really? Now guess what? We got an errand we want you to do. Really? We want you to go to Starbucks. Oh, I do. Get coffee for everybody, a really complicated order. I would love to just go get some coffee. And you're the only person who can do it. Yes, I want to get me coffee now. Okay, but first, let's do this one more time.
Again, that's kind of symphonic, that, isn't it? There are just so many complicated elements to that. The character work is so good.
A thing that interests me is the bit where, I mean, it's so just funny. Eddie Murphy is just being so funny in that. And the key thing that releases the laughter is the crying and the fear afterwards. And making that just deep, essentially, that's making trauma hilarious. And that's and it sort of shows you that essentially good comedy comes from playing something sort of truthful. And I think that's a hugely underrated film, Bowfinger. It's really great, and you don't hear much about it. I mean, nobody slags it off, but people don't mention it. And Eddie Murphy is terrific in it. He plays two brothers. One is a film star, and the other is a sort of very nervous guy who Steve Martin is exploiting to try and pretend that his film star brother is in a film that he isn't. That's one of those moments, just the ridiculous unfairness of it, and you can't believe the amount of traffic. And from
How do they do it? Because that's some sort of special effect,
genuinely, I'm pretty sure it's not stunt drivers, but just you sort of think stunt drivers and that. But how would the stunt drivers stop anyway? But I love from the beginning of the film, the main thing, not the film, sorry, of the scene, the main thing you're hearing before it gets explained is the noise of traffic. Yeah. The sort of terrifying noise. Never has traffic felt more unsettling and dangerous than it does as Steve Martin tries to explain the scene over it. It's great.
Let's have the next one. This is a slightly different pace, this one, I think, if it's what I'm expecting.
Trust me to forget Cousin Harris was an expert knife thrower.
You won't be building any more motorways round here in a hurry.
What's in your letter, Bert?
It's from the Bishop of Manchesterford. No, I can't have an annulment, and yes, I did leave my gardening gloves in the vestry.
Hear that, Mrs. O? Hear that, Mrs. O?
Look, Mrs. O. No amnesia.
Oh, I am pleased. You're delicious. How my gingerbread. Oh. Coming right up, Miss Berta.
Berta and Babs get it themselves, Mrs. O. I'd like a word.
Why, of course we could.
There's been a new development over Berta's father's will. A new one has been found, dated the day he died.
Who's the sole beneficiary now?
That's the problem. It's a little redhead he met in the blackout in 1943. They had one night of passion and he never saw her again.
Or he thought he never saw her.
What do you mean, Mrs. O?
Oh, well, I'm grey now, Mr. Clifford. Very grey indeed. Right up until 1947, my hair was red. As red as a London bus.
There is almost you could watch that 100 times and spot new things in it. Like Victoria Wood's sort of unbuttoned blouse. There's so much attention to detail in it.
Yes, the thing is, I don't know. I mean, I vaguely remember Crossroads as being a slightly shaky program, but I don't really know the genre it's parodying, and I can't believe that recorded television, and that is what it was ever.
It was
anywhere,
very like that. The performances. I mean, Duncan Preston is doing an almost unexaggerated performance of how Ronald Allen used to be in Crossroads.
It's just I'm sort of you can't, because what you have to believe is that they got to the end of that, and this was a time when videotape wasn't cheap and all that sort of, but they got to the end of that tape on the multi-cameras and they went, we'll use it. And that fundamentally isn't believable. You'd think they'd have gone again just for, but it doesn't matter, because you will yourself to believe it. It really is the willing suspension of disbelief, because you just want to believe they're that shit and those cock-ups are on that level and they were all allowed to happen at once, and then they went, because the punchline you don't see is the program makers going, that'll do, put it out. And that's the overarching joke of the whole thing, is that that there are some people you don't see that think that they have made a plausible television drama about an antiques shop, and that is it. It's just sort of it's delightful, and Julie Walters is just pushing everything, but the bit where she doesn't know what she's saying, and the ill-concealed incomprehension is beautiful. But also it completely works that she does know the bit that is her big moment, her big dramatic moment. She's learnt that. She just hasn't been bothered about more bullshit about my my gingerbread. Oh, never mind, I'll wing it. No one will notice.
Brilliant. And like several of the things you've chosen tonight, comedy with really something quite serious to say.
Well, it's the perfect joke to start with. We're all different. We're all individuals. I'm not. It's just so you think you can enjoy thinking about it for 6 long minutes, and it's still. But obviously, yes, it is that sort of that comes from the thing that comedy does, which is it sort of empowers the outsider, and that. And that joke does that on so many levels. And I was surprised that I would have thought that clip always gets chosen. Apparently not, because I just think that's probably the best joke in all of Monty Python, and I love all of Monty Python. But that joke is about the crowd all shouting together. That couldn't be more resonant in the internet age. That's social media right there.
Yeah.
And the one that says "I'm not" gets jumped on. That's.
We've come to the end of our time here now, but I think we need to in a way to hand over to a person who is not here. Our final clip of the night will be of the great Barry Cryer, who I know was a great friend of yours. So. What would you like to say about him?
Well, I think I think Barry had an amazing life, and it was very, very upsetting the news that he died. But at the same time, he is just such a focus for celebration for anyone who loves comedy, and particularly for the people who knew him, because he was an incredibly warm, funny lover of the joke, and. He always had a new joke, and he loved new comedy, and he loved the creation of a new joke. And for all that it's sort of shocking that he's suddenly not here, it's what an amazing life he had, and how much pleasure did he give. And it was a long life, and he was supposed to be performing at this festival. And it's very sad that he can't be, but how amazing that a week or two ago, that was still his plan. And he was, recording a podcast earlier this month. And so he was doing what he did right until the end. And I feel very proud to have known him and to have overlapped in comedy with someone so amazing. So.
So we're going to listen to a clip of Barry, and then I think we'll thank both Barry and David. So let's run the clip.
What about that? Laurel and Hardy. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been a wonderful audience. Time is against us. We haven't even got time for a custard pie in the face. So... Don't do it! We've run out of time, Barry. Sorry, we've got to... Let's just... This was 250 quid, sunshine. Before we... Don't you dare. Before we go, I'd just like to thank Barry Cry, who's got lost, unfortunately, in the building, and he's... Go on there, but watch the nose. That is frozen, and that's a big nose.
Right,
yeah?
okay.
I don't want it flattened.
Are you ready?
Softly now. That'll do. And that's your fault! Barry Cryer, ladies and gentlemen! You've been a lovely audience. Can we thank everyone at the Slapstick Festival for bringing Laurel and Hardy to the big screen. Thank you very much. Good night. Thank you.
Dougal.
Hamish, you'll have had your tea.
It's more than tea I'm after on a day like this. How's the birthday, boy?
I'm trying not to think about it.
Why? Everybody remembers the uproarious party you had for your 74th.
Aye. What a night that was, eh?
Remember the noise Mrs. Naughty made on the bagpipes?
Aye. She should have looked before she sat down.
Oh, and Big Tam did his impression of Kirsty Walk.
Very convincing it was too, till the corset came off.
The high point was the haggis with 74 candles on it.
74 candles, and what a crowd of people turned up.
Oh, they just followed the fire engine.
And there was you jigging about like a mad thing.
Well, I put my sporran on back to front.
Well, you should have worn a kilt.
What? And spoil the fun? You'll be having a grand shindig this year, no doubt.
No, I will not. I don't want any fuss. I hope you haven't bought me a present.
No, of course I haven't.
You mean bastard.
As a birthday treat, I've decided to tell you a joke.
To tell me a joke?
To cheer you up.
Well, make your mind up which.
Dougal, pin back your lugs. Here comes the joke. There was this lady...
Oh, I've heard it.
Oh. All right, there was this other lady...
Oh, that's a new one on me.
She was walking down the street when she came to a pet shop.
Oh, Duncan's pet shop in the high street.
All right, Duncan's pet shop.
Did she buy a wasp?
He doesn't sell... He doesn't sell wasps.
Well, he always has one in the window.
Look. Who's telling this joke, you or me?
At the moment, it's anybody's guess.
Well, in the window, she saw the most beautiful parrot.
Oh. Not much of a punchline, though.
I'm not finished yet.
It soon will be.
Look, she went in and asked the chap, how much is that parrot? He said, £20. She said, £20 for a parrot like that?
Daylight robbery. He saw her coming.
No, it was going cheap.
Parrots don't go cheap.
Oh. Well, this one was.
Oh.
Because the man said, The man said it used to live in a brothel.
Did you say a brothel? Ladies present?
Usually, yes. So the parrot used to live in a brothel, and it had rather an extensive vocabulary.
Such as what?
Use your imagination.
That's a strange thing to say in a brothel.
Be that as it may. The lady said, I don't care. This parrot is so beautiful, I'll take it. So she paid £20 and took it home.
The end. Not one of your best, I'm afraid.
No! When she got home, the lady put the cage on the dining table and took off its cover, and the parrot looked round and said, new place, very nice.
The parrot said that?
It did.
You're stretching credibility here, old friend.
She called in her daughters to admire the parrot, and the parrot said, new place, nice girls, very nice indeed.
Oh, no. Oh, this parrot has got completely the wrong end of the stick.
Then the lady's husband came in, and the parrot said, hello, Keith.
And?
And what?
What did Keith have to say for himself?
Look, it's a joke, not a mini-series.
Oh, you sure it was a joke?
They all laughed.
He didn't.
Who?
Keith.
Ladies and gentlemen, David Mitchell and Barry Cryer.
Barry Cryer.